I can hear my heart beating in my ears. It's loud, and my hands feel slippery. Maybe my uncle won't find me here, hiding under the desk in my father's home office. I can still hear laughter and talking above the music coming from the living room. I try to quiet my thumping heart by singing a lullaby to myself quietly in my head. I stop my quiet singing. What is that? Thump, thump, thump. My ears press close to the ground. I can hear footsteps. Oh God, no, please let it not be my uncle. Liliana, where are you? I can hear him calling my name. I try to curl farther into myself, balled up on the ground, huddled under the old oak desk. The footsteps stop. There you are, he says. Were you hiding from someone, foolish little girl? I look into his face, but his eyes are replaced with oozing pools of blood. I woke up panting and sweaty all over. The uncle bleeding eye dream. It had been years since I'd seen that face, felt that fear. I'd had enough therapy to know what it meant and to try to get over my childhood traumas from that bastard uncle of mine. But here it was again. I sigh, peel away the covers from my overheated body, and get out of bed. I feel anxious and exhausted. Time feels like it is running out for me, and more importantly, for my clients. Nothing feels easy these days. I thought moving to Hiawassee Springs was hard, but fighting for the ability to stay in this town in a job that has come to mean so much to me and my clients is a whole other thing. One of the hardest parts these days is what all of my mood swings are doing to my sweet Joshua. I know that he wants so desperately to be supportive of me, and even though he says that he is, he feels miles away since our discussion about the baby. I was going through our mail last week, and I came across a letter from Cornell. Okay, it was addressed to Professor Joshua Stone and not to me, which I understand is a federal offense. But in our sorting of household duties, I am in charge of opening and filing the mail. So I opened and read the letter, and it was from the head of the English department at Cornell, who was responding to a request Josh had made for information about their hiring needs and tenure clock. And well, Mr. Dean of English seemed very interested in Josh and his quote, enormous talent, unquote. Oh my God, was Josh looking for a way out of Hiawassee Springs? Was he looking for a way out with me or without? I filed the letter for Josh and put it in a separate filing cabinet in my head where I'll store it until I figure out what in the world to do with that information. When not building new defenses against my husband, who might secretly be plotting to leave me, I divide my time these days between caring for my clients and trying to find new sources of funding to keep our operation afloat. I have even more trouble sleeping through the night these days, and my dreams are plagued with disturbing images. Footnote 30. Oh, come on. Are you really that curious? Do you really need to know every alarming thought my crazy little head comes up with? If you must, I will indulge you. Well, there was the circus dream where I was the dancing bear in the tutu, and I was embarrassed by the little pink tutu that I had to wear. And I tried to complain to the head of the circus, parentheses, who was that green lizard from the car insurance commercial with a Cockney British accent, and he just held his little green belly and laughed at me, end parents. Then, just 2 nights ago, I had a dream that Josh and I were living in Greenland, parentheses, which is the cold and icy one, often confused with Iceland, which is the pretty country with the great view of the northern lights and the beautiful women that pirates used to steal, end parents. And I was pregnant with triplets. After they were born, Josh's family moved to Greenland to help us take care of the kids, and I couldn't handle it. So I skipped town with a local pilot. and we moved to the part of Alaska where we spent half the year bathed in light and half the year shrouded in darkness, and all year long with a pet moose named Sphinx. I loved that moose, and I liked the pilot well enough, but still, I missed Josh and the kids growing up in Greenland without me. Okay, that's the end of the footnote. Okay, getting back to the main text, where is it? Without the funding, there won't be any more clients. I haven't yet turned anyone away, but I know that fateful damn day is coming when I will have to learn to say no. While the sand floods out of the hourglass at the IJC, I have been savoring the time we have left by working with some remarkable people. Just a few weeks ago, I had a pair of sisters enter my office. I knew we'd be friends for life when these two little ladies asked if I was the same age as them. Angelique and Marinelle are 15 and 17. I, as you know, am not. They feigned shock that I was, as they said, quote, so old, unquote. I liked them just a tiny bit less after that comment, but really just a tiny bit. Their story seemed remarkable to me when they told it, although remarkable is a concept that loses its impact when you see, again and again, the ways that people hurt, abuse, and exploit each other, especially the ones they love. Angie and Maroney were 8 and 10 when their parents brought them to Miami on a tourist visa somewhere in the middle of June that year. Angie and Maroney didn't think that they were going to stay in Miami. Their parents said that they would all go to the United States, visit their, quote, relatives, footnote 31. These folks were nice enough, but turned out to be family friends without the time or means to raise their friends' kids. And then maybe see Disney World. The girls were enjoying the visit in the U.S. and were not aware that their stay would be more permanent until their parents enrolled them in the local elementary school. They lived together in Miami until Christmas of that year. Their parents then sat them down and had a conversation with them. As the girls tell me, their elderly, diabetic father and poverty-worn mother told the girls that they loved them very much, that they did the best they ever could for them by bringing them to the United States, and that they would now return to their home in Cap-Haïtien, Haiti. Maroney remembers giving Angie a hug, telling her that she would take care of her and that they would be okay. They don't remember being angry at their parents since they agreed they had tried real hard. One of the guidance counselors in Maroney's school, Ruth McLean, footnote 32, found out that the girls were living on their own, and it broke her heart. Okay, footnote 32. Ruth was a delightful little spinster, about 60 years old. She never married, but she had the requisite 4 cats and suspiciously good friend named Leslie that she lived with. She also wore equally suspiciously comfortable shoes. Ruth called her sister Mary in Hiawassee Springs, who had been trying to conceive and had recently been dealt the news that she had 2 non-functioning ovaries and a lopsided uterus, and asked whether Mary would like to look after the girls, maybe even adopt them. Mary drove down to Miami to meet the girls, and she just fell in love. Maroney was too old to adopt for immigration purposes, having just passed the age of 16, but that Angie was still of age. The girls didn't feel right about having different last names, or one of them being adopted but not the other, so Mary became their, quote, permanent guardian, unquote, but, quote, mom in every other sense of the word. The young sisters only came to my office because they heard that I could help. When I met them, Maroney was doing very well in school, all A's and just a few B's, despite working 10 hours a week at a fast food restaurant to send money home, speaking English as her second language, and helping to take care of her younger sister, who was not half the student that Maroney was. In addition to being their mom, Mary McLean was also, like her sister, a guidance counselor at Hiawassee Springs High School. Mary, bless her sweet heart, just couldn't imagine loving Maroney more if she were her own child, and thought Maroney was the, quote, county's prize pie, unquote. Her words, not mine. I kid you not. Anyway, sweet Mary had her heart and her head in the right place. After she realized that Maroney would qualify for financial assistance for college but could not apply because she lacked lawful immigration status, she got my number and called me at the IJC. We talked for a while, and then she put Maroney on the phone. I was struck by how grown up she sounded, with only the slightest trace of an accent. We made an appointment for the following day after school. Maroney brought her sister, and they told me their story about how they had been brought from Haiti and abandoned. They didn't see it that way, but I knew that a judge might. Thankfully, our fine American Congress enacted the Special Immigrant Juvenile SIJ provision of the Immigration and Nationality Act to assist undocumented immigrant children who have suffered parental abuse, abandonment, or neglect. The enactment of that SIJ statute demonstrated the government's recognition that kids who have experienced various kinds of maltreatment in their families deserve special protection in the U.S. Given the unceremonious abandonment that Angie and Maroney suffered, and jumping through various legal and logistical hoops, we got the girls this special visa and got them on their way to their chosen professions. Footnote 33. 33. Maroney wants to be a doctor and to work with poor rural communities in Florida. After her experience in juvenile court and filing for her immigration status, Angie thinks she wants to be a public interest attorney. They say imitation is the most sincere form of flattery. When working with child clients, I constantly put on different hats while navigating the balance of legal ethics and professionalism. I probably hug my clients more than I should. In the interest of full disclosure, I hug the crap out of them. There, it's out there. May the authorities come and take me away. I use the fact that I don't look much older than them to my advantage to try to forge a bond and to have them trust me like their lawyer and like their friend. I am their zealous advocate, and I hug them with zeal. That's just how it is. Yesterday morning, I got a call from a local private immigration lawyer. There are less than a handful of these characters in town, and each one of them barely ekes out a living. That said, these lawyers try to take on some pro bono cases while recognizing that they just can't afford to feed their families and make pro bono a large part of their already meager practices. Dan Thomas, one of the more colorful private immigration people in town, gave me a call yesterday morning. Dan likes to brag that he graduated very last in his class, but that he passed a bar, and so people still call him lawyer. It wouldn't be my first go-to for a good joke, but he likes it. So Dan calls with a client in his office, and while she's in the room, he says, "Miss Lily," which he really has no reason to call me since Dan is a carpetbagger from less southern places than North Florida. "I have a client here for you." I sigh inaudibly, since these, quote, clients that he has for me don't always have avenues for legitimate legal relief, and I usually spend more time giving bad news than good. I also hate to talk to potential clients about their potential immigration cases in front of Dan, or any other attorney for that matter. It reminds me of when my dad used to ask me, "Doesn't your sister have beautiful hair?" I didn't think that Elena had beautiful hair. It was a pale blonde color, limp and straight. But I also didn't think the bounds of decency permitted me to tell the truth. I knew that she envied my full-bodied auburn curls, even though I hated my hair, like almost every American teenage girl growing up. When I was young, I didn't have the fortitude to confront my dad privately, to ask him not to put me in that situation. I just knew that I shouldn't tell Elena that I thought her hair looked like dirty straw just stomped on by an angry albino horse. I mean, that's just not nice, right? I have the same allergic reaction today to being asked on the spot, whether I can assist a potential client on immigration matters. I also have more than a slight problem with conflict. This may be news to you, but I am not perfect. My flaws aside, or maybe because of them, I always tell Dan, just send them by my office. Dan does, and within a matter of a little more than an hour, potential clients show up at my friendly little office. Yesterday, it was Osa Robo, Osa for short. I always ask about an unusual name. I'm sure you're curious as well. Amongst the Igbo people of Nigeria, her name means God is the magician or miracle worker. It was almost like she was making it up. I mean, I had never met someone more devout in the face of so little to believe in. Ah, lovely Osa. Once she got over her disappointment that I was not an older grown woman and instead appeared to be just a girl, she began to tell me her story. Her eyes brimmed with liquid, mascara smudging her cheeks, but she bit down on her lip, counted to 5, and began her story again, this time without tears. Osa had come to the United States from Nigeria 10 years earlier. She had originally to New York to study at Columbia University. There's a typo there. And she had a legal student visa for her studies. She was studying religion, economics, and studio art. Osa had many talents. Her 4 years in college breezed by. She studied, was very involved with her church, and worked several years as a waitress / dog walker / babysitter. She loved the freedom and excitement of New York City. Unfortunately, sometime during the frenetic busyness of college, she stopped renewing her immigration status. So she had long been living in the U.S. without any real right to do so. During those years, she had made many friends, but did not really go out on dates. She had only one secret crush, Robert, a fellow Nigerian who lived out of town, but who shared a commitment to her faith and a strong friendship with her pastor. Their friendship grew over those 9 years and culminated in a surprising discussion for Osa. One autumn afternoon, seemingly out of the blue, Robert declared that she was the woman for him and that she had always been, but he had been too shy to admit it to her, afraid that she would reject him. He got down on one knee right there in Central Park, with the golden and red leaves descending upon them. He asked. She demurely, yet excitedly agreed. They made plans, first a civil ceremony, and then a proper church wedding. By December, they had done both with traditional Igbo wedding garb and families from Nigeria in tow. Such bright colors, red and blue and gold and green. I got to see all the lovely pictures, big white smiles, and vibrant fabric. And then, in the next month, they were off to start their married life together in Hiawassee Springs. Robert had a good job working as an architect with a local design firm. They arrived, and Robert drove Osa around town, showing her where all the important sites were. When they passed the mall, she asked to go in, and she saw a Banana Republic store where she had worked in New York and got an application for a job. She felt satisfied and excited that she was employable and would not be a burden to her new husband. And so, Osa sold clothes for that first month at the Banana Republic, and she was the top seller that January. She was so successful that they asked her to apply for a managerial position. The only catch was that she didn't have her own car, and Robert grew tired of taking her to work. At first, he continued to take her, albeit never on time and never when she asked. After a while, he just could not be bothered. You see, Osa is a devout Christian, a true believer in marital harmony, and although she knew she would miss her job and financial independence, she conceded to Robert's wishes that she stop working and just stay home. Osa figured that instead of working outside the home, she would throw herself into all things domestic. She asked Robert if they could have some paint so that she could clean up the mold-infested and decaying walls. He grew very angry at her suggestion and refused to speak to her for a full week. Osa felt terrible for upsetting him. She tried again about a week later to ask him if she could do the grocery shopping, to make him nice meals every night when he came home from long days at the office. Again, he refused. He would do the shopping, and she would eat what he wanted her to eat. She tried one more time a few months later, when she grew the courage to ask again for something that she needed. Robert, she tried, with great trepidation, afraid of upsetting the already fraying blanket of marital harmony that she had tried to stitch each day with loving words and a devotion to their faith in God and each other. Can I please borrow the car to go to church this evening? There's a Bible study class, and it is too dark for me to be walking along the unpaved road in the evening. I'm afraid that one of the cars won't see me. Please? She knelt down before him, as he had asked her to do, and avoided his eyes, just using her voice to plead with him. He flinched, as if punched in the chest by an invisible hand, but he didn't say a word. The following morning, Osa woke up at around 6 a.m., and she noticed that Robert was not there. She thought maybe he had left early for work. She checked his closet, and thankfully, all of his clothes were there. She waited patiently in the house all day for him, but even at 11 that night, he still hadn't appeared. She finally called the police, but they assured her that her husband would be home soon and that they had to wait until he was missing for 48 hours before they would start searching for an adult. Osa was incredibly worried, and so she prayed with all her might that Robert would come home soon. He never came home that night or the next. She tried calling him at the office, and his secretary told her that he could not be reached. She felt as if she would go mad. Okay, let's take a break here. This is a really long chapter. Seems kind of like a snooze fest to me, but I did also want to go ahead and show Dan Markel's blog post on Prawfsblawg, where he tried to sell people on the idea of Wendi's book. So this is his post from Monday, November 7th, 2011. Hopefully people can just read that for themselves, but he starts it out by saying, I'm excited to announce that later tonight, my wife, the incomparable Wendi Adelson, will be doing a book signing for her new novel entitled This Is Our Story. If you're in Tallahassee, I hope you'll stop by. Where? Student Life Cinema 942 Learning Way, FSU Main Campus. When? Monday, November 7th at 7 p.m. Admission is free and open to the public. Download her ebook here or buy a copy in person! ! And if you're curious about the novel, here are some reader reviews and a description. This Is Our Story follows the lives of Rosa and Mila, two young women from different countries who become victims of human trafficking when unwittingly duped into domestic servitude and commercial sexual exploitation in the American Southeast. Their experiences with the underbelly of globalization here in our own backyard, and the legal battles they wage against their traffickers with their immigration attorney, Lily, are told in their own voices and hers, in vivid and compelling detail. Finally, Wendi has been teaming up with some others to blog on issues related to human trafficking and the law, and you can find that great resource over here. Okay, so the comments, this is an interesting comment posted October 25th, 2019 by someone, Graham K. Lee. All the evidence, parentheses, from her book, her life, and her family, end parents, proves to me Wendi is an out-and-out covert narcissist, all caps. Same as her mother, and if her brother Charlie isn't one, then he is complicitly involved with her in her narcissistic machinations. Okay, so long time ago, November 7th, there was a comment by Oren Kerr. that says, "Send my congrats to Wendi. That's great. The comments to this entry are closed." Okay, so this was Dan Markel way back when, trying to help promote his wife's work. And for the record, despite Wendi claiming that her husband didn't read her novel because he said he didn't like fiction, well, according to Ruth Markel, in her recently published book, a friend of Dan's did tell her later that Dan had, in fact, read the book. So thank you guys for your interest in this case, and I will continue reading more chapters. This is a really long book, so we're just going to focus on the chapters told from the point of view of the Lily character, which is supposed to resemble Wendi. So thanks for tuning in, and I will try to record another video when I regain my voice a little bit more again. Have a good evening.